So the next person that we have here on stage, we're welcoming our platinum sponsor to the stage, Julie Amey, Vice President of Finance at Qatar Shell. Julie is a finance professional with over 26 years of experience, predominantly in the oil and gas field industry. She graduated with a Bachelor's of Management Studies, BMS, New Zealand, where she was born. She's married to Matthew. They have 2 children, Sophia, 8 years old, and Sammy, 5 years old. And her interests include world travel and has been a tourist in over 80, that is 80 countries. Yes, so for those of you that want to hear about gender parity, she will be talking about that today. But those of you who want to know where she's been, we're going to hear about that today too, I hope. Welcome Julie to the stage.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I have to say, my naughty me is talking to me, telling me that I might need a lot more than Harriet's lip gloss to get me through this session, because following that fantastic session then, and also moving the whole day from all these inspirational personal stories down to business. So bear with me through this, because I think I have some great insights to share with you. And we talked about forward-thinking organisations. So I want to say one thing about that. Forward-thinking organisations are simply a bunch of forward-thinking people. So don't get hung up on the corporate veil here. It is just about a bunch of people who are forward-thinking. So one thing you didn't hear in the introduction was what gives me the right to stand on the stage today and talk to you about gender parity. So I can tell you that I am not a published author. I have not written a book on gender parity. I have not written an article on gender parity. So it's certainly not my academic supremacy that entitles me to be here. And also, I didn't study gender parity at university. So I did finance, of course, and management. So I haven't actually studied or had any qualifications around diversity and inclusiveness or gender parity or anything that pertains to organisational effectiveness. So it's certainly not my educational qualification. And actually, I don't work in the skill pool of gender parity. I don't coach, and I don't work in our fabulous human resources department where they really focus on talent management. I am always been in the skill pool of finance, so it's certainly not my day-to-day work. And unfortunately, I have never presented to the United Nations about women's rights and gender parity, so it's certainly not my stardom around that. So what gives me the right to stand here today is the fact that I am a woman with 50 years of woman experience. I am a career professional, 27 years of working and lots of experience from that. I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am a wife, I am a role model, I am an employer and I'm an employee. I am a senior leader, one of the top 1.2% of Shell actually, globally. And I'm a business partner. And above all else, I have the opportunity within my reach to make a big difference when it comes to gender parity. So that's what gives me the right to stand here and talk to you about gender parity. But I have to say, those things give every one of you the right to be standing up here as well and talking about gender parity. So I think that is a huge responsibility that we all have. So I encourage you, actually I demand of you that you embrace that, because every single one of us could be here talking about it. And we've been talking about gender parity for years. It's going back, I think in New Zealand actually was the first country to give the woman the right to vote, 125 years ago. So we have been talking about it for a long time. And according to the World Economic Forum, we will be talking about it and working on it for the next 60 to 160 years. So I hate to think how I'm going to be feeling then, but I hope we can speed up that progression. So what is gender parity? 2 very, very simple words, but what does it mean? So gender parity simply means equal opportunity, equal treatment, equal respect. So everything just being equal. It is that simple, and it sounds so simple. Why on earth is it so complex? Why are we not getting there? If it was easy, we wouldn't even need a forum like this in the same format today. It is hugely difficult, and the world is changing. And as the world changes and as we change, of course, what gender parity means also changes. So what I want to talk to you a bit about is what some organisations like Shell are doing. And you heard some of that already today with Fatima was speaking about some of the opportunities she has and what she's given from the corporate world. But I want to talk to you really about two key things. And it comes down to structure and then enabling some structure. So when I talk about structure, the first thing I'm talking about here is some foundations. So at Shell, of course, like many companies, we have some foundations. And foundations are your policies and procedures and your recruitment. It is the structure you put around your network, your supporting network. And it's actually the leadership programs that you have in place. So in Shell, we have recruitment policies which will say that you will have a woman on your shortlist. And if it takes you twice or 3 times as long to recruit because of that, then you deal with that. That is an expectation that you set. We have policies around, we've heard about flexible working. We've got policies around maternity and paternity leave, escort leave, the clothes that you wear, PPE. So Fatima talked about, having clothes or overalls for site, which actually fit women. We have all of this in place. And we have structured formal networks. We have in Shell globally, we have over 35 women's networks in the world. We have a huge women's network here. And I just want to say that the women's network is not for women, it's for everybody. But it is run by women, but it is for everybody. And we have learning sessions. And Shell globally has 3 dedicated leadership programs just for women. And they have about 5 leadership programs which incorporate gender diversity, and so it's for everybody, but it has a key focus on it. So what the structure does, it gives you a tone. It gives you a culture that you're trying to build. It sets expectations, and if you don't like those expectations, then you should work for another company, actually. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to change how we operate as an organisation and the culture that we set. And let's face it, in a perfect world where gender parity is part of your leadership and it's part of your organisation, you don't need these structures because it just happens. But we don't live in a perfect world, so we do need to do that. So let me share with you a couple of problems that we have with this kind of structure. So when you have a structure around policies and procedures and requirements and you will comply and you will do these things, what actually ends up happening is that people get complacent about why you're doing what you're doing. So policies and procedures and structure do not necessarily build understanding behind the intent. So if I give you an example, a few weeks ago I was talking to one of my business colleagues, and he's recruiting for quite an important position that we have in Shell. So I was asking him how the recruitment's going, and he said it's taking longer than he thought, because he's struggling to find a woman. So he opened up the door for me to ask him this question, and only I can ask this question, only a woman can ask this question probably, but why do you want to recruit a woman? And what I wanted him to say to me was, because I need someone in my team who can bring some more compassion. I need someone in my team who is more forward thinking in terms of strategy and risk. I need someone in my team who can spend more time on development of my team, someone who can bring balance, someone who can bring role modeling. The answer I got was, the policy says I need to. So when you get that, and really well intended, but you lack the understanding, the intent behind it. So my role as a senior woman in the company is to help my colleagues get that understanding behind it. The other problem with policies and procedures is that sometimes they can be misunderstood about how they should be applied, and we don't apply enough creativity. So a good example of this is when I came to this position, and I have quite a large team that works at Ras Laffan Industrial City. And if anyone knows where it is or have been there, you'll see that it's a couple of hours drive, it's dusty, dirty, it's the heart of our business actually, and it's very exciting up there. But I have quite a big team there, and I said to one of my team leaders, when are you going to get a woman in your team? There are no ladies in the team. And he said to me, women don't want to work here. But I know there are a lot of women who work at site, but not in our finance team. So I said to him, how do you know a woman doesn't want to work there? He said, because I ask them, Do you want to work at site? No, I don't want to work at site. So I said to him, you know what, if you ask me that question, I would also say no. I mean, I would rather work in West Bay and by the water and do that. Why would I answer the question that way? So I said to him, you have to ask the question a different way. So I said, let me have a go. And I knew there was a role coming up, and I knew I had a lady in my office who would be great for it. It would be really good for her development. So I sat with her, and I understood her aspirations in her career, and I could see quite clearly that she really needed to do one of these roles to meet her career goals. So I said to her, what would it take from me for you to want to work at Ruslafan City? And so she told me the 3 things that were of concern to her, and they were all very, very manageable things. So today she is working there, she is loving it, she is doing incredibly well, and she is role modelling out there. So the other thing you need to know with these policies and procedures is how you apply them and how you ask the question is equally as important as what the intent of the policy is. The other thing that becomes a problem especially for everyone, but mainly for women, is that these structures open the door for you. They open the door for you. You walk right through that door. You sit down at the table, and you own that. You own that seat. But then what happens is that those structures will not keep you at the table. You have to earn your right to be there. Organisations exist. Businesses exist on a meritocracy. So you have to have the competence, and you have to have the capability, and you have to have the courage, and you have to take the personal risks, and you have to do all of those things that will demonstrate to everyone that you have earned that right. So don't get hung up on how you got through the door, but you really earn that right at the table. So I think this is where the next level of support structure comes into an organisation, and it's something that I will just call talent management. So what you do need to do is you identify your talent at a very early stage, and you have structures about how you do that and how you nurture them through what they want. And then you put structure around, have sponsorship and mentoring. You actually put structure around building an inclusive environment. You educate people and train people. And what does it mean to be inclusive? Because you cannot have diversity if you do not have inclusiveness. And of course, you have opportunities, you have structures, you need to understand micro-inequities. You need to educate people on micro-inequities, on unconscious bias, and then you put mitigations in place. So one of the things that I do is, in some of the heavy lifting and some of the issues that we have, is I spend a lot of time thinking about, we have all of this stuff, so why are we where we are? We've got about 15% of women working in Qatar Shell. Globally in Shell, we have about 37% of women. When I look at graduate level, we are bringing in parity. We have 50-50. And when I look at the Royal Dutch Shell board, this year we achieved parity there. But when you look through the organisation, it's not sitting there yet. So we have a long way to go to get women through the organisation to the top. So I mentioned before a couple of the reasons why this is so difficult, and one of this is this understanding. Why do I need to do it? So if I ask my line manager, what makes me so good at what I do? He will talk a lot about the strengths I bring as a finance person, as a forward thinker, as all of these things. But nothing he says is a unique woman quality. But if I asked him what I didn't do well, I would start to hear some of those qualities that are probably more associated with women. So if I give you a very sort of a generic example, if I am an expert map reader and I ask my boss, and he will say, you are a masterful map reader. But if I'm not an expert map reader, and just to say that I am not an expert map reader, I hate reading maps, actually, that's why I have GPS. But he would say, yeah, you're a woman, women can't read maps, And I must admit, I probably say that a bit about multitasking. So until we can really nail what are those unique qualities it is that only a woman can bring versus the unique qualities that only a man can bring, then we'll really struggle to articulate the value that we bring in terms of gender parity. Because gender parity means that you take those unique qualities that a woman has and those unique qualities that a man have, and you combine them together, and it is amazing. And when we talk about balance means business, it's because what you get out of that combination is that you get better business decisions, and of course you get a better business outcome. And that's what we're aspiring for. So the other area where it gets a bit challenging as well is that, and I would agree that, women need to do more of the heavy lifting, actually. So women do recruit women. So I was recruited by a woman, and my boss today, my finance boss, is a woman, and her boss is a woman, and she is the second most senior person in Shell. I recruited women this year, and I've recruited many graduates women. And it is proven fact that when you have more women, you will recruit more women. But if you have an organisation that doesn't have many women, that's a lot of heavy lifting for those ladies. And this is where you use your networks and you reach out and you get the support you can. And it's absolutely essential that women support each other in this respect. So some of the heavy lifting that we do as women is we hold the mirror up. So when we see gender inequities, when we see subconscious or unconscious biases, we hold the mirror up and we show people, hey, this is our gender thing. Don't get pulled into that trap. So we highlight all of these things. And I think at the end of the day, we have a huge responsibility here. But it is one that I think we are very good at. We have a lot of passion for. So I see my time is up. So we're going to go into a bit of Q&A. But one thing I would say to you is that, we talk a little bit about men and women. We talk a little about when would we have gender parity. And I can tell you, if you look at the World Economic Forum, that gender parity gap is worth 12 billion or something, huge number. But for me, it's very, very simple. And I would say, my view is that we've reached gender parity when this room has gender parity, actually, because this forum is not for women, it's about women, and it's not about balance means business, it means balance is business. So the dialogue continues, but it is a dialogue that we have together, in the same way we have a dialogue about other things that impact everybody in the world together. So that's what we have time for, so thank you very much for listening. Any questions? Thanks.